After an 11-year run as Toronto Maple Leafs president, Brendan Shanahan is moving on. The team announcing they will not renew his contract. We are tracking reaction from the hockey community this hour.
Plus, the bubble zone bylaw passes at City Hall. We're going to have reaction to the now approved rule, which could limit protests outside places of worship and schools.
And counting down to another Canada Post strike. What happens if workers walk off the job tonight? We'll have everything you need to know.
Well, it doesn't take a lot to know that it's been a soggy day in the city. Toronto is still under a rainfall warning.
You're watching.
Good evening. I'm Bakari Savage.
And I'm Lena Latafat. Thanks for joining us and welcome to Live at 5. We're following breaking news from the hockey world. MLSE has made it official. Brendan Shanahan is out as Maple Leafs president.
MLSE says Shanahan's contract, which expires at the end of June, will not be renewed. Shanahan had already been given permission to speak with the New York Islanders about a front office job. He held the top job with the Leafs for 11 seasons, but despite regular season success, the team has struggled in the playoffs, including a loss in the second round this year.
MLSE president and CEO Keith Pelley says Shanahan has made countless contributions to the club on the ice. His statement goes on to say our responsibility and driving motivation, however, is to add a new chapter to the Maple Leafs championship history, and it was determined that a new voice was required to take the team to the next level in the years ahead. The franchise will be forever grateful for Brendan's contributions and wish him and his family every success and happiness in the future.
Well, for his part, Shanahan says being a part of the franchise will always be one of the greatest honors of his life. He goes on to say, quote, while I am proud of the rebuild we embarked on starting in 2014, ultimately, I came here to help win the Stanley Cup, and we did not. There's nothing more I wanted to deliver to our fans, and my biggest regret is that we could not finish the job.
For more on this, we're joined live now by John Viveros, host of Hot Take Hockey. John, thanks so much for joining us to talk about this breaking news. This is not a total surprise, though.
No, Lena, not a surprise at all. I think when you look at the last 11 years, as you guys talked about, limited success for a team that had so many expectations. Only 2 series wins in 11 years under Brendan Shanahan. I do want to rewind back to where the Toronto Maple Leafs were when Brendan Shanahan took over, and that was a mess. It was a disaster of an organization. It was a team that I would say overachieved in the early to mid 2010s with that playoff appearance in 2013, that sole playoff appearance where then they lost to the Boston Bruins in 7 games. You fast forward a couple of years, and while they had some promising teams, it was kind of that stalemate, that mediocre process. So for the Toronto Maple Leafs, bringing in Brendan Shanahan, it went from a disaster of a team to a team that was respectable in terms of making the playoffs. And when you look at those 9 consecutive years, it's a team that was high in the standings. You look at this year, winning the Atlantic Division, but there's so many more conversations to have, and it's accepting that mediocrity. It's accepting only that first round. And I think when you look at the 2023 first round win against the Lightning, it's like it delayed it even more. So I think fans are tired of the excuses. They're tired of the limited expectations. They're tired of just making the playoffs and not doing anything at that point. So I think for Brendan Shanahan, you've got to give the respect for getting the organization back to a competitive level. But I think fans, after over a decade, want more than just that playoff appearance.
Hey, JV, I want to get your reaction to this. Part of the statement by MLSE President and CEO Keith Pelley, quote, a new voice was required to take the team to the next level in the years ahead. How does that balance with what Shanahan did right?
You know, it's interesting, Bakari, because I think when you look at Brendan Shanahan, a former NHL star, like alum, just a guy that's respected around the league, and I expect whether it's the Islanders or not, he's going to get another job. I think the new voice, whether it's from Brad Treliving, having more of that autonomy, having more of that say, I think that's a possibility. Elliot Freeman and a lot of other insiders out there are already saying the expectation is that he should be back. Brad Treliving, I'm saying he should be back. So I think if that expectation is there, maybe it's Brad Treliving straight to CEO Keith Pelley, and there's a little bit more of that new conversation between Keith and Brad. Guys that have not been in in the organization for too long. So new perspective, new voice, and also just, like I said, a lot of people want to call the Toronto Maple Leafs current state the yacht club, the country club. I think it's a little bit of getting out of your comfort zone here, and it's making those tough moves. These guys don't have much investment, and I would say that relationship and history that Brendan Shanahan has with these Leafs. Like, Brendan Shanahan was here with the William Nylander draft, the Mitch Marner draft, the Austin Matthews draft when they got that first overall pick. And Brendan Shanahan played with William Nylander's dad, Michael Nylander, on the Rangers. So with all those relationships, Bakari, there's those connections and there's that investment from Brendan Shanahan. I think having the different voices that don't have as much investment in the core four, I think that's what Leaf fans are looking for.
Yeah, there's a real relationship there, and Shanahan has talked about his relationship with Toronto as well. As you pointed out, it's been a disappointing couple of years, and fans certainly want more than just heartbreak. When it comes to making tough decisions, is this it for changes at the top, John, or do you see more coming?
At the very top, Lena, I think this is the big one, right? Like, this is the president of the organization. I don't think at the top, in terms of Keith Pelley, he just joined the organization. I think for MLSC, the ownership, we saw the kind of transition in terms of Rogers and Bell and the sale. So a lot of that's already transpired. I think the rest of the changes, Lena, is just going to come to player personnel. And Mitch Marner is a pending unrestricted free agent. So in terms of the top, I mean, he's the top in terms of the players. There's been a lot of reports that the Leafs tried to sign him to a big contract during the season. He didn't want to negotiate then, and now he's going to be an unrestricted free agent as of July 1st. So they could still sign him, and maybe there's an opportunity to do so with Brendan Shanahan moving on. But I think there was a relationship there as well. So I think with Brendan Shanahan moving on, if anything, it's a sign of things to come in terms of movement on the player level. Austin Matthews has a no movement clause. William Nylander has a no movement clause. It might be Mitch Marner, Lena. Outside of that, I think a lot will kind of stay the same in terms of management, maybe different scouting personnel, but that would be about it.
Is it too soon to talk Shanahan possible replacements or what's being floated?
Honestly, Bakari, it might actually be too soon. The only reason I say that is because I think the status quo for the Leafs right now is focusing on what's to come. And bringing in a new face, a new situation just this close to the timeline. Like, as we're talking right now, we're almost in June. And that's going to be timeline for draft. That's going to be timeline for free agency. That's going to be timeline for a restricted free agent in Matthew Nyes. So I think Brad Treliving, he's been with the organization for 2 years. So how I look at it is you might not just have a president. You might have two guys that are kind of serving different roles, where Keith Pelley, a lot of the organizational structure, he's going to have that role at the top of the CEO, and Brad Treliving as the general manager will handle a lot of the hockey operations as a leader and then kind of divvy up the responsibilities throughout his team. So I see it as that way. Obviously that can change, and maybe they try to bring in a president for the new season, but how I see it right now, it's going to be Keith Pelley and Brad Treliving kind of working together to take next steps for this team going into the offseason.
All right, we're following breaking news. Brendan Shanahan out as president of the Toronto Maple Leafs. John Viveros, host of Hot Take Hockey, thanks so much for your reaction to this.
Thanks a lot, JV.
Thanks for having me.
Well, after hours of debate, City Council has now approved a bylaw to restrict protests near places of worship, daycares, and schools.
CP24's Arda Zakarian has been tracking that debate very closely. She joins us live from inside council chambers with more on the city's new bubble zone bylaw. Arda.
That's right. There's a bunch of amendments to the original bylaw. Here with me is Councillor Brad Bradford with all the details. Can you tell us what happened today and what were some of those changes that were made?
We were able to make a couple of improvements to the bylaw as it was originally drafted. The first thing was the removal of the attestation requirement that essentially had places of worship have to go and demonstrate that they had been attacked or victimized before we would put protections in place. That was the wrong approach. That was removed. We're granting the safe access zones for up to a year. We've increased the bubble zone area from 20 meters, which was really, 1/5 of what other municipalities have done. That's gone up to 50 meters. So there were some proactive changes that were helpful. And look, a lot of places were able to get this done a lot faster. We haven't seen the type of leadership here in the city of Toronto. We haven't seen elected officials standing up for vulnerable communities. But today is a victory. I'm glad we were able to get something done. And hopefully we can strengthen that on a go-forward basis.
There was some concern that this infringes on the right to expression, the right to assemble. What are your thoughts on that?
everybody has the right to expression, they have the right to assemble, but they don't have the right to hate and intimidation and violence. And, I'm happy to stand up and say that those types of hateful protests that we have seen outside of houses of worship, that's unacceptable. You don't need to harass and intimidate and threaten people when they're on their way into the mosque or when they're on their way into the synagogue or daycare. That's what these bubble zones are really intended to protect against. We've had this type of legislation on the books for many years when it comes to protecting access to abortion clinics. And so the very same people that are out criticizing bubble zones to protect places of worship would also go and defend the bubble zones around abortion clinics. And I think that's really admirable and important as well. But today we were able to get something done for the communities that have been crying out for support for 19 months, and I'm glad Council was able to finally demonstrate some leadership and put something in place to protect those vulnerable residents.
When can we expect it to actually come into place?
I think this will come into a force very quickly. We passed it today at Council. We're going to have to do some work to sort of stand this up and make sure that we have the resources in place from a bylaw perspective. But look, our bylaw officers and police have been dealing with a dramatic rise in hate crimes, nearly 100% since October of 2023. And so they have been out there trying to deal with this. This gives them one additional tool in their toolkit to help keep vulnerable residents here in Toronto safe. And I think that was the right thing to do.
Councillor Pasternak said that this means that bylaw officers and police officers really have to work together.
Of course, it is a municipal bylaw, so the first line of enforcement is our bylaw officer, but we always know that they work closely with the police, and there will likely need to be engagement from Toronto Police, as they have been, to help manage some of these protests. You don't have to go very far in the city of Toronto to see some of these hateful mobs, hateful protests that have been engaged in threatening behavior, intimidation, sometimes violence. That's what we need to protect against, and I think that's why so many Torontonians were frustrated, with the mayor, with council, in dragging their feet to put something like this in place when you've seen leadership in municipalities like Vaughan and Brampton and Ottawa and Oakville that were able to get to this position much faster. But as I always say, it's never too late to do the right thing, and today was a victory here for people who have been looking for safe access to places of worship here in Toronto.
Thank you so much for this, Councillor Bradford. Appreciate it. We also had a chance to speak to people who oppose the bylaw. Here's one.
There have definitely been incidents that are concerning. I'm Jewish myself, and anti-Semitism is concerning. But what's happening is that people are speaking about anti-Semitism for incidents that are not actually targeting Jewish people because they're Jewish. So some of the incidents that they've mentioned today about protesting at synagogues have been when there have been political events being hosted by those synagogues. So they weren't interrupting people who were there for worship. They were there because of the nature of the political events that were being hosted. And that's a valid reason to criticize.
So this will cost the city about over $1 million, and anyone who breaks the bylaw could face a fine of $5,000. Back to you.
Arda Zakarian live at City Hall with the latest on this contentious bylaw. Thanks so much, Arda. Appreciate your reporting. Well, the wet weather continues with a rainfall warning posted for some areas, including the city of Toronto.
Southern Durham and Niagara region are also under the rainfall warning, so the rain's expected to taper to showers at some point this evening. But more rain's on the way tomorrow. The Toronto and Region Conservation Authority says flooding is not expected, but river levels and flows could change rapidly, creating unsafe conditions. And Environment Canada senior climatologist Dave Phillips joined us earlier with more on this miserable stretch of weather.
Not only has it been cool and kind of a cold rain, but it's been lasting for a long time, a whole week. This whole week, the average temperature has been, almost about 8 degrees colder than it should be. I mean, it's warmer up in the Northwest Territories than it is in Toronto. Come on. And so my sense is that this has been a long bout. Often in May, you'll get, 2 or 3 nice days, followed by maybe a not so nice day, and then back into the nice days.
Phillips says, even though it doesn't feel like it today or this week, we are still on track for a hot and humid summer. I'm still waiting.
Well, the number of measles cases in the province continues to climb.
Public Health Ontario says 173 more infections have been recorded over the past week. That brings the total caseload since the outbreak began last October to almost 1,800. The agency says the virus is spreading primarily among people who have not been vaccinated. Most of those who have contracted measles throughout the outbreak are infants, children, and adolescents. 129 patients have required hospital care so far, with 10 being admitted to the ICU.
Right now it's 5:14, 10 degrees. This is Live at 5.
More than 55,000 Canada Post workers, they are set to walk off the job at midnight if a deal isn't reached. We haven't heard of any progress thus far. We're going to have more on where negotiations stand. Stay with us. Well, time is running out to avoid another strike that'll snarl mail service across the country as tens of thousands of Canada Post workers are set to walk off the job for the second time in just a couple of hours.
Okay, for the very latest on the labor dispute, let's go live to CP24. CJ.
Lena Bakari, we are just hours away from 55,000 Canada Post workers walking off the job. The strike deadline is 11:59, and that means if a deal is not reached, these workers will walk off the job at midnight. And unfortunately, no major progress in terms of negotiations. There has been a lot of back and forth over the last few days. Right now, the ball is in the union's court. So let's break down what's been happening in terms of the latest, what we know with these negotiations. So yesterday, Canada Post gave Cup W, that's the union representing 55,000 workers, a new offer. That offer includes a wage increase of 13% over 4 years, improved benefits and health pensions, and guaranteed hours for part-time employees. Canada Post all said no. The union asked Canada Post that they could have a 2-week extension to look over this offer, but Canada Post said no, it's been 2 years, and that further delays would be in no one's interest, that they should settle this now. So that's where we are. The union says this offer falls short and that the strike deadline is still at midnight. As for what would happen if that strike goes through, this would be the second strike in less than 6 months. All parcel mail delivery would be stopped. They won't be accepting any new items. Banks have been warning customers to switch over to online banking. And we spoke to earlier today an executive director with the Toronto Business Improvement Association on how businesses are coping with this pending strike. Take a listen.
Uncertainty is probably the biggest challenge that small businesses face out there, whether it's with the tariffs, whether it was through COVID and closures, etc. All these impacts, all these uncertainties have an impact on local small businesses. So it's unfortunate. Fully understand both positions. 55,000 employees, many of them are consumers. Many of them shop at our local businesses, etc. We are supportive of both sides.
And a big sticking point when it comes to these negotiations is weekend delivery. Right now, Canada Post doesn't deliver on the weekends. It wants to hire part-time workers to do that job, but the union says its full-time employees should take over. So a lot of debate over how that weekend delivery should be rolled out. And in terms of other disruptions people could be facing, one thing that Canada Post will be continuing to do despite the disruptions, if there is a strike, they will continue delivering any social assistance checks, so pension checks, child benefits, Lena Bakari, all of those will still be going out in the event of a strike, but there will certainly be widespread delays and disruptions when it comes to parcel delivery. Back to you.
All right, CP24, CJ, thank you. And rolling strikes involving Workplace Safety and Insurance Board employees are being held across Ontario.
Yeah, this was the scene outside of the WSIB's Toronto office on Front Street this afternoon. The union, representing some 3,600 workers, says contract negotiations have reached an impasse on fundamental issues like wages and workloads. Leaders from a number of unions were on hand for today's demonstration.
We invited the WSIB to do a joint study with us to investigate the workload problems that they refused existed. So when they refused to participate with us, we went out and we found the internationally recognized Copenhagen Psychosocial Survey, peer-reviewed, created by scientists. The results are irrefutable. We have a toxic workplace. We are under-resourced. People are coming in early, working through their lunches, working late, just to try to take care of injured workers, and as a result, their health is suffering. So we said to WSIB, you have to do better. They haven't done better.
WSIB exists because there was an agreement between workers and employers that they would have this program, and so that there wouldn't be legal, lawsuits. And what we're hearing now is an employer who's decided to interfere with a century-old program that has been doing great things for workers and for employers.
We are at the table at any time that anybody wants to have a discussion with us. It was Aki who walked away from the table. They haven't had any communication with us since Monday, and we hope that they do return to the table. They haven't responded to an offer that includes a wage increase above inflation, and we hope that they do come back to the table so that we can have that discussion.
WSIB workers have been without a contract since the end of April.
All right, 522, 9 degrees. That sloppy drive continues tonight. Our adjunct CA Bylaw keeping a close eye on the rainfall and how that's impacting the evening commute. The rain is just not ending.
Yeah, it's not stopping at all, Lena. It has been continuous. It's been a little bit gray and slick and slippery. And if you're on the major routes, not making for a nice drive.
Okay, we're having a little bit of trouble hearing Adjoa, so we're going to get back to her as soon as we can. In the meantime, we're going to take a quick break. It's 522, 9 degrees. This is Live at 5.
And coming up, a man has been sentenced to life in prison for the fatal stabbing of a woman on the TTC. A man has been sentenced to life in prison in the fatal stabbing of a woman on the TTC.
Neng Jiajin pleaded guilty to first-degree murder and attempted murder in the incident at High Park Station in December of 2022. The court heard 31-year-old Vanessa Kerpuska was an innocent victim who was randomly stabbed 3 times in her chest while sitting on a train. A second woman was stabbed a number of times as well, but she survived. During sentencing, the judge said Jin was consumed with his own anger and despair over his failing vision and sought revenge on random vulnerable strangers.
And several people are facing a lengthy list of charges as part of a drug and gun trafficking bust in Durham region.
Investigators say 12 guns were seized as part of the probed Project Venture. They include 8 handguns, 2 rifles, and 2 shotguns. More than 3 kilograms of cocaine was also recovered, along with nearly $130,000 in cash. 10 people have been arrested and 112 charges have been laid. Investigators allege the accused were part of a network that spanned the Durham, Toronto, and Waterloo regions.
Project Venture was an undercover operation. We were targeting a drug trafficker that was operating in our region. And through those contacts and dealing with that drug trafficker, we were able to move up the supply chain as well as focus on a gun trafficking operation as well.
Our message is clear and consistent. Trafficking drugs and firearms will not be tolerated in Durham region. We will be relentless in our efforts to identify and arrest those engaged in these criminal activities threatening our communities.
Investigators are also trying to locate 33-year-old Dexter Taylor Bailey in connection with the probe. So he's wanted on 6 charges. Anyone who knows his whereabouts, you're asked to call police or Crime Stoppers.
526, 9 degrees. You're watching Live at 5.
And the Blue Jays were looking for the series sweep this afternoon against San Diego Padres. We're going to tell you if they were able to do it. What's coming up? So the Blue Jays were looking for the series sweep this afternoon against the San Diego Padres.
Through the left side, a base hit. And Nathan Lucas walks it off.
Nathan Lukes hit a walk-off single to left field in the 11th inning as Toronto took this one 7-6 to sweep their series with the Padres. The Jays now head to Tampa to open a 3-game series with the Rays tomorrow night.
We're now, it's 529, 10 degrees. This is Live at 5.
We are following breaking news after an 11-year run as Toronto Maple Leafs president. The team parting ways with Brendan Shanahan, announcing today they will not be renewing his contract. We're going to have reaction to this next.
After an 11-year run as Toronto Maple Leafs president, Brendan Shanahan's moving on. The team announcing they will not renew his contract. We're tracking reaction from the hockey community this hour.
After hours of debate and several amendments, City Council's now approved a bylaw to restrict protests near places of worship, daycares, and schools. We'll tell you more about the bubble zone bylaw.
Counting down to another Canada Post strike. What happens if workers walk off the job tonight? We'll have everything you need to know.
Plus, is it ever going to stop raining in Toronto? We're going to tell you more about the soggy afternoon as the city remains under a rainfall warning.
This is Live at 5.
Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us. I'm Lena Latifa.
And I'm Bakari Savage. Well, the offseason changes have already started for the Maple Leafs. Brendan Shanahan is out as team president.
CTV Toronto's Scott Lightfoot joins us live with more on the announcement made late today by MLSE. Scott.
Alina and Bakari, the Shana plan has been Shana canned. MLSE announced late this afternoon they would not be renewing the contract of Brendan Shanahan. Perhaps not a huge surprise to Leaf fans who are, of course, still reeling after that Game 7 loss against Florida. This move coming just days after the team was eliminated and ending yet another cupless season. Now, Shanahan is, of course, a Hall of Fame hockey player. He worked in the NHL front office before taking the role of president and alternate governor for the Leafs over the last 11 seasons. Now, he has been responsible for a number of moves the team has made both on and off the ice. His strategy, which never achieved its goal of bringing a Stanley Cup to Toronto, was, of course, dubbed the Shana Plan. Now, in a statement this afternoon, Shanahan said, in part, "Well, I am proud of the rebuild we embarked on starting in 2014. Ultimately, I came here to help win the Stanley Cup, and we did not. There is nothing more I wanted to deliver to our fans, and my biggest regret is that we could not finish the job." We also got a statement from MLSE President and CEO Keith Pelley, who said Shanahan made countless contributions to the team, adding, "Our responsibility and driving motivation, however, is to add a new chapter to the Maple Leafs championship history, and it was determined that a new voice was required to take the team to the next level in the years ahead. The franchise will be forever grateful for Brandon's contributions and wish him and his family every success and happiness in the future." Now, Pelley did not say what that next step would be. He did say, however, he will speak to the media tomorrow afternoon. It's expected he will also be asked if the team is planning any other big moves in the offseason. As for Shanahan, it was reported earlier this week that the New York Islanders had actually reached out to the Leafs organization asking for permission to speak to him about a job. So though he is currently unemployed, it may not be for very long. We're live outside Scotiabank Arena. I'm Scott Lightfoot, Bakari, and Lena, back to you.
All right, Scott, thanks so much for this. Appreciate it. It's now 5:35, 9 degrees. Let's get a check on the evening commute with our traffic specialist, Adjoa and Sia Bois. That drive, not fun.
Not fun at all. I wouldn't use fun. I'd use a little bit of a tricky go if you're trying to get home. That rain really increasing your drive times, and so are problems. So we have these issues that have been with us for about an hour. This is the northbound lanes of the 404 right at the 407. Collision does have that right lane and shoulder blocks as you try to make your way home through all of this wet stuff. The delays are still there from well before Bayview Bloor. Then on the 401, problems through Scarborough, eastbound 401 in the collectors. This is through Kennedy. Stall transport off to the side with heavy tow, but MTO crews are blocking the right lane, so that's adding to the slow drive. The rest of the 401 just a wet and slow commute, and it looks like there's a problem. This is brand new. This is the 401 if you're traveling on the westbound side. It's a ramp that takes you to Weston Road. Stalled vehicle in the right lane. Usually this ramp floods when it rains a lot. That hasn't happened yet, so that's a good sign. And the Gardner, very busy as you try to make your way out of the downtown core. Delays start from Parliament. They continue all the way out to the 427 on city streets in the downtown core. Crews on scene of a collision on Spadina just south of Bloor. I'll send it back to you both.
All right, with that traffic update, CP24's traffic specialist, Adjoa and Sia Bois. Well, after hours of debate and several amendments, City Council has now approved a bylaw to restrict protests near places of worship, daycares, and schools.
CP24's Arda Zakarian joins us live from inside Council chambers with more on the bubble zone bylaw. And as Bakari was talking about, there are a number of amendments here. Arda, tell us more.
Yes. For example, one of the main amendments is that the bubble zone, instead of it being 20 meters, it's now going to be 50 meters wide. With me right now is Councillor Gord Perks. Councillor, thank you so much for joining us at a very busy time for you. What are your thoughts on this bylaw?
This is a big step backwards for Toronto. What people don't understand is every right we have, the right to go to the worship where you want, the right for women to vote, the right for people of color to vote, these are all things that we won by protest. Protest is the way we win and protect each other and make this a more free society. And I oppose the idea of putting restrictions on protest.
And one of the thoughts that were here is one person said that this could just be the beginning of more restrictions. So what are your thoughts on that?
I don't know. I don't know what the future holds, and I don't want to speculate on that. But I will say, every time we chip away at your right or your viewers' rights to stand up and say, I don't like what the government's doing, we chip away at democracy. So it's a bad day for Toronto.
Let's go to the opposing side, who says that these areas of places of worship, faith-based daycares should be protected, and the people that go them should be able to go those places freely and without fear.
So there's actually law in the criminal code that if someone physically tries to stop you from going somewhere, the police can come and assist. This bylaw doesn't fix that, and frankly, bylaws have way fewer enforcement powers than the criminal code. So anyone who's saying this bylaw helps in that way is probably stretching the truth a bit. But on top of that, we have to, ask ourselves questions. How could this apply in ways we didn't intend? One example is survivors of the residential school system from time to time have done protests at churches. Are we saying they shouldn't be allowed to do that? Unfortunately, the way this bylaw is written, no, they aren't allowed to do that.
Tell me about some more of the opposing views on this, saying that, a lot of them feel scared going, we heard one woman say that for the JCC Miles Nader daycare, that they were scared leaving the area, and the school called them to all leave early.
Yeah, and I hate that we live in a world so filled with violence and hate. I hate that kids, more in the United States than here, have to do active shooter drills. It's an ugly world right now, but we don't make each other safe by silencing each other. History has always shown the only way you win and preserve rights is by people speaking up, getting on the streets, and yelling for change. And today, we actually, took away one of the tools that won religious freedom in this country, which is free speech.
Councillor Brooks, thank you so much for this. Thank you for your time. I'll let you go back and vote. He snuck away from me stole him away for a couple of minutes so that we can speak to him. I'm going to send it back to you in the newsroom, Bakari and Lena.
All right, lots of opinions on this one. It's been a busy day at City Hall. Thanks for this, Arda. Let's talk about the wet weather, which continues tonight with a rainfall warning posted for some areas, including the city of Toronto.
Southern Durham and Niagara region are also under the rainfall warning. So the rain's expected to taper to showers this evening at some point. But more rain's on the way tomorrow. The Toronto and Region Conservation Authority says flooding is not expected, but river levels and flows could change rapidly, creating unsafe conditions. Environment Canada senior climatologist Dave Phillips joined us with more on this miserable stretch of weather.
Last year at this time, yesterday and today, it got to 30 degrees in Toronto, not 10 degrees like it was yesterday, or barely today. We might get to 11 degrees. But my gosh, that's certainly the normal should be around 21. So we're talking about 10 or 11, 12 degrees cooler than it should be. But that's just only the beginning of the misery. I mean, it has actually been a lot of rain yesterday, I think, or up to this morning. We had about almost 23 of 24 hours with rain, not kind of a rain that sort of hits and runs, just kind of a gloomy kind of rain.
Yeah, pretty gloomy out there for sure. Phillips says we are still on track for a hot and humid summer.
Allegedly.
Yeah, reportedly. 5:41, 9 degrees. This is Live at 5.
Well, more than 55,000 Canada Post workers are set to walk off the job at midnight if a deal is not reached. The latest on where negotiations stand, next.
Welcome back. Time is running out to avoid another strike that'll snarl mail service across the country as tens of thousands of Canada Post workers are set to walk off the job in a matter of hours.
Okay, for the latest on the labor dispute, let's go live to CP24. CJ Lou. CJ.
Lena Bakari, the strike deadline is at midnight. That means if a deal is not reached, 55,000 Canada Post workers will walk off the job, and this will be the second strike in 6 months. In terms of where we're at with negotiations, no progress in the last 24 hours. The latest that we heard was that Canada Post sent a new offer to the Canadian Union of Postal Workers. This new offer includes a 13% wage increase over 4 years, improved health and pension benefits, as well as guaranteed hours for part-time workers. The Canadian Union of Postal Workers asked Canada Post for a 2-week extension to look over this proposal, and Canada Post said no, that a further delay is not helping anyone in this situation, that negotiations have already been going on for 2 years and that they need to settle this now. So this is where we're at. The union has the offer. They have already said it falls short, but still no updates on what's going to happen ahead of the strike deadline. So we're looking at workers potentially walking off the job in just a couple of hours. And that would mean mail service, parcel service would be halted. No deliveries would be made across the country. They also won't be accepting any new items. So Canadians will have to turn to other options such as FedEx or UPS to get their mail out. Earlier today, we spoke to a labor lawyer on his thoughts on the labor negotiations. Take a listen.
I think you may see more of a work to rule, so strategic moves by the union without a full-blown work stoppage, because I think it's a temperature check as well, but by the union in terms of do we have public sympathy right now, and I'm not sure it's there right now given the enhanced offer that's currently on the table.
A major sticking point with the negotiations has been weekend delivery service. Canada Post wants to extend its services into the weekend, deliver 7 days a week. But the issue comes with how they're going to do that. Canada Post says, let's use part-time workers, while the union is pushing for its full-time employees to take over that role. As for other possible disruptions when it comes to this Canada Post strike, Canada Post did say that its workers will that they will continue delivering social assistance checks. So anyone waiting for pension checks, child benefit checks should still be getting those in the mail. But the last time, Lena Bakari, if you'll remember, was that 1 month strike during the holiday season, and that certainly caused a lot of disruption. Back to you.
All right, CJ, thanks so much. And we're watching the clock, of course. 6 hours to go. If the two sides can't reach a deal, 55,000 Canada Post workers are going to walk off the job. You're watching Live at 5 on Toronto's Breaking News, CP24. Still to come.
2 staff members of the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C. were shot and killed last night while leaving an event at a Jewish museum in the U.S. Capitol.
Welcome back. 2 staff members of the Israeli embassy in Washington were shot and killed last night while leaving an event at a Jewish museum in the U.S. Capitol.
Israel's ambassador to the U.S. says that the man and a woman, they were leaving the Capitol Jewish Museum when the suspect approached a group of 4 people and began shooting. They have been identified as Yaron Lashinsky and Sarah Milgram. Well, police identified the suspect, 31-year-old Elias Rodriguez. And a witness to the shooting was emotional when describing what he saw.
I was walking by, and a guy came up and looked like a gun. I couldn't tell what it was, but I heard it afterwards, the shots, and he shot this young couple.
And Prime Minister Mark Carney saying he's devastated and appalled by the shootings. Here's what he wrote on X. This was a targeted attack against the Jewish community, a violent act of anti-Semitism. The hate is intolerable, and I condemn it in the strongest terms. Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand unequivocally denounced the shooting as well.
I am absolutely appalled and horrified by the murder of 2 Israeli diplomats in Washington, D.C. My thoughts are with their friends, their families, and the broader Jewish community. not only in the United States, but here in Canada. The rise in anti-Semitism is unacceptable, and it must stop.
And police across the GTA are increasing patrols around places of worship, schools, and other community centers following the Washington, D.C. shooting.
We want to make sure that our community of every faith understands that we are listening and we are aware of incidents that are happening outside of our jurisdiction as well. While this didn't even happen in Canada, we do know that it does have a strong impact on our Jewish community as well as other communities within the region. And we're taking the proactive opportunity to move forward and get our officers out there so that they're being seen. Hate has no place in York Region whatsoever. And we want to make sure that everybody understands that any of these hate bias incidents are going to be investigated. While there's no active threat, there's no information to suggest anything like that would be happening in our region. We want to make sure that we're getting out there and showing the community that we are listening and we are aware.
And authorities are investigating social media posts potentially linked to the suspected gunman advocating for violent retaliation over the war in Gaza.
It's 5:52, 10 degrees. This is Live at 5.
Well, Canada's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has been named the NBA's most valuable player. We're going to speak to his trainer right after this. Don't miss that conversation.
He set the foundation. He was the first Canadian basketball player I knew of. And like without seeing guys go to the NBA from Canada, it wouldn't have been as much of a dream as it was for us as kids growing up. So to be in a conversation with a guy like that and what he's meant to not only basketball, but to the country of Canada, it's been special.
Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has officially been named the NBA's most valuable player. The 26-year-old Hamilton native led the league in scoring, propelling the Oklahoma City Thunder to the best regular season record in the NBA.
And joining us now for more on Gilgeous-Alexander's MVP win is his friend and trainer, Nem Illich. Nem, thanks a lot for joining us. Listen, I got to see the smile there because a win for Gilgeous-Alexander, it's a win for the family, for the community, right?
For sure. Thank you guys for having me, first off. But, yeah, it's definitely a big, exciting moment for sure.
Tell us about how you're feeling. I mean, it's got to be surreal for you, for your family, for everybody. Yeah,
I mean, yesterday when the news broke free, I mean, we were obviously expecting it. We were hopeful of it, but once it became official, it was exciting. My phone was blowing up. I can only imagine Shai's phone was going crazy. So everyone just congratulating and wishing you the best. So it was a really good feeling.
Okay, so just before we came to your interview, we, played a clip of Shai's press conference. During that press conference, he talked about, a friend giving him a book about karate in terms of, keeping him focused. Are you that friend?
No, that wasn't me. I think that book might have been before me.
Okay, so let's talk about his focus and determination. What has that been like, and what have you been impressed by over these years?
Yeah, that's probably the one thing that separates Shai from a lot of guys in the league is his consistency, like he talked about, his focus, his level of discipline. Like he truly wants to get better every summer, every day, not only as a basketball player, as a person, now as a father. And that's what really separates him. And it's honestly been amazing to see. That's one way that I try to be as much of an inspiration as possible to show, a level of consistency and discipline, although, I'm not at that level or playing a sport in any professional setting, still being able to show up day in and day out for the things that you want to accomplish.
And you have such an interesting perspective as his trainer. What's that been like? And what do you think separates him from all the others on and off the court?
His ability to not let himself be distracted. Like there's no partying, there's no, alcohol. He doesn't let the lifestyle of being a superstar get to him at all. Stays super grounded, stays super focused. And that part is special. And that's where you get to really see who he is. And the success that's coming from that is 100% because of that.
Hey, Nem, can you share some of the conversations with us when, he didn't get it the first or second time and, he gets that title this time? What have those conversations been like, bouncing back from that and staying focused?
Yeah, someone like Shai, I mean, once he doesn't achieve something the first time, like he's going after it. So it was obviously a goal last year. I mean, came up short, but we knew that the way he's been progressing in every single summer is just a jump after a jump. It's getting to a point where I'm like, okay, how many more jumps can this guy really make? Because, it's even surprising me at this point. And I'm sure even for himself, one day he's going to look back at it and be like, damn, like every year was this improvement. So the ceiling is just...
We're going to have to leave it there. We've run out of time, but this has been such an inspirational conversation. Thanks, Nem. You're watching Toronto's Breaking News.